Today is the anniversary of the Upstairs Lounge fire. That's why we're all here. My panel is, I think, the best panel because it's my panel. I'll introduce myself. I'm Kathleen Conlon. I'm the president of the Archives Project of Louisiana, LGBTQ. I have decided to embrace, if you don't know me, I've embraced the other side of 50 in leopard print. Yeah, girl. Because it used to be for old ladies. I'm not an old lady. I'm a leopard lady. Okay, so with that being said, Hunter, why don't you start? Sorry.
Is this on? Okay, great. Hi, my name is Hunter Burke. I adapted a book written by Johnny Townsend into a screenplay called The Fire Upstairs. And thank you all for coming. This is wonderful.
Hi, I'm Max Vernon, and I wrote a musical called The View Upstairs.
Hi, I'm Monica Ordoñez. I am the artistic director of Melange Dance Company, and I choreographed a production tributing the stories of the patrons of the Upstairs Lounge.
My name is Brad Dalton. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm a theater and opera director, and I adapted Bobby Fiesler's book, Tinderbox, into a dramatic reading for 5 actors and jazz pianist.
And we're back to me. Okay. This came up in conversation last night, and I think it's a viable point that we should address because some people have issues. Let's leave it at that. I think no one is from here, including myself originally. I have a 40-year history, but I'm from Massachusetts originally myself. I think, Hunter, you're the only one that's actually from Louisiana. Okay, and that being said, and y'all can go in any order, whoever wants to speak first after I ask the question. What inspired you to do this work? Max, you're looking at me. You go.
I would say for me, what made me want to write this musical is just being a queer millennial and feeling really disconnected from my history. The only other gay person I'm aware of in my family was my Uncle Robert, who died of AIDS when I was 10. And no one in my family really talked about it. And I think also because of the AIDS, epidemic, there is a chain missing, a link in the chain missing in terms of mentorship, the kind of mentorship that you would see at bars like, the Upstairs, where if you were new and, you went to a bar like that, someone might take you under their wing and say, here's how you exist in the world. So I never really had any of that. And so I ended up going to college to become a queer studies major at NYU, and I was studying with all these professors who were supposedly some of the most esteemed scholars in this whole field of research. And then it was 14 years ago, I think I randomly stumbled upon an article online about the Upstairs Lounge fire, and I thought it was fake news. I was like, how could this literally be possible? Because I'm reading about cyborg feminism and, disability as queerness, and yet we're not talking about this. This seems pretty primary. And so I brought it to the attention of some of my professors, and my professors had not even heard about it. And so I was like, that is crazy. And so that kind of sparked something in me where I was like, I don't know what form this is going to take, but I really, even if it's just for the rest of my life telling people about this at parties or, although it's not maybe the best party topic, but I wanted to get the message out there into the world. And I love musicals. I write them. And I went back to grad school for musical theater, and my teachers encouraged me to write a piece about this.
That's correct.
Similar to Max, I had just founded my dance company, and as a choreographer, I'm so passionate about telling stories that people don't know and bringing these stories into light. And I feel that dance has a way of reaching people that they might not feel things otherwise. And so I wanted to do something about New Orleans and the history, and I was just astonished that no one really knew about this piece of history. And to be honest, I started researching the patrons, and I was just enamored by them. Just, how they put on these productions. They had prayer at church, and they were just so dynamic, and I felt inspired to tell the dynamic stories of these patrons, as well as a cautionary tale to help shape our future. This is New Orleans' deadliest fire. More people need to know about this, and we need to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
My interest in the fire started when I was walking down Iberville Street and I saw the memorial marker. So we have Dexter Breck to thank for that, because I saw it, I read it, I asked my tour guide, how is this possible? I have never heard about this. And they said, oh, yeah, there's this story of this fire, and he told me that. And at the end of it, I was so interested, and we just kept talking, and he finally said, I'm going to include this on my tour. I didn't realize this is so important to people. Or I did, but I just kind of usually walk past it, So I thought that was great. But years later, Bobby Fuesler came out with a book. I immediately grabbed it when I saw it. I read it. I was just absolutely captivated by the beautiful writing and the tribute to those victims, and putting it into social context and cultural context and queer history context. I'm gay myself. My husband's sitting right there. You may not know that, but I'm gay, and this is my husband. So during COVID, I was sitting around, I was reading books, and we weren't doing anything, right, because we're all at home. And I just thought, gosh, I read a book, and I have this whole world in my head that we never see. And I'm not the first person who thought, well, I'd like to take some literature and some books and make them into something dramatic. And I immediately thought, I don't know why, it just popped into my head one day. Who knows how these things happen? We're not even doing it ourselves. I just saw it. 5 actors, jazz pianist, go. And so I just thought, I called up Bobby Fuesler, and I thought, I'd never done anything like this in my life, so I'm getting away from the point of why I did the piece. But Bobby luckily just said, do whatever you want, and it all began. But as I think that what we do as artists is we tell stories. The telling of stories humanizes things for us, right? We have a message. A playwright has written a theme or an idea, a thesis about life, and we as artists use our ability to empathize and understand our humanity enough to bring that across. So I thought, what better subject for us to make an artistic act of empathy with than the victims of this fire? So that's what was my inspiration.
That's correct, awesome.
I think I saw a Gambit article in maybe 2010, and it was a blurb about the fire. And at the time, I just moved to New Orleans, and I was attempting to become a screenwriter, and I was looking for a story to tell that felt unique and original. And shortly after finding that, I found Johnny's book, which had just been published, I think. And started to read more and more about it, and wrote many bad versions of it. And it continued to elude me. I couldn't figure out how to tell the story other than just like a standard A to B, biopic, docudrama. And it wasn't until, I continued to read Clayton's book, watch Robert Camus's documentary, and it wasn't until finding Bobby's Tinderbox that it kind of locked in the significance of the people involved with the fire, but also the people that are dedicating their lives to passing the story along, the oral tradition of it, and that kind of really sunk in about what the script should be about, as well as what happened in '73. And so after that kind of linchpin clicked in, I was like, okay, this is the story, this is the purpose, this is why this needs to happen, because as they've said, no one knows about it, and luckily, continuing here, we're spreading the word. So, yeah.
That is also correct. And actually, I got to see Hunter's work the other night. There was a reading at the Always Lounge, and I hope your film comes to fruition very soon, because it was really a fantastic, really powerful piece of work.
Thank you. Checks in the mail for saying that?
Yes.
Yeah.
We also shared the screen. I was crackhead number 3 in several episodes of Claws. Actually, crack whore number 3. Yeah. But I hung up my crack whore sheath, and here I am now. Anyway, my experience with learning about the Upstairs Lounge fire was I moved here in 1980, and anybody that is as old as me or older would remember Anything Goes on Iberville Street. I worked there. And Fury, who you mentioned the other night in your piece, was bartender across the street at the Midship, and she scared the bejesus out of me. She's like 8 feet tall, transgender person, woman, flaming red hair, and actually was the nicest person ever when you actually knew her, but very, very foreboding to meet, and took nothing from anybody. And like, oftentimes we'd be leaving work at Anything Goes, and across the street there'd be bodies being hurled out the door, committed some offense. And down the street was Wanda's, which you also referred to in your work the other night, another trans, and it was a trans hangout. Like, that's where there was nowhere else for them to go. And the whole reason why this fire happened, where it happened, was, as again, older people know, gay people were very marginalized back then. So bars had to be in the seedier parts of town because people were literally scared to death of being outed. And the upstairs lounge was like two more blocks down, around the corner here. You'll see it today if you haven't seen it already, the location. And the first time I hear of it, I'm leaving work with a bunch of new friends who happen to be gay men, and they're going to take me to the Golden Lantern, which little did I know was going to become my home for the next 8 years. And we walk by that corner, and all these guys just get really weird and start kind of freaking out. And I'm like, what's up? And they're like, that's where it happened. They wouldn't even say it. People were so freaked out by it. And this is like 1981. So it's, 8 years later, and people were still so freaked out they wouldn't even talk about it out loud. I mean, it was just so bizarre, and nobody knew about it outside the gay community, and it just blows my mind that like this is 50 years later and people are just learning about it now. So we're going to change history, and as well we should. And with that being said, my next question is, and again we can just go in the same rotation if that works for y'all. And also, in reflection of what I just said about all this, what kind of criticism or flack have you dealt with for the work that you have, commissioned, the work that you have created?
I'm shaking my head because last night we had opening night of our production of the Upstairs Lounge, and it was a wonderful, wonderful audience. And afterwards, I spoke with a gentleman who was kind of quiet, and I said, "Did you enjoy it?" And he was like, "I don't know." And I was like, "Oh," because I had never had someone tell me that, and I was a little off. I was like, "Okay," like. And he explained it was very moving, but he didn't know if it was something that he could enjoy because of the subject. And I said, that's totally understandable. So I think it's important to humble yourself and prepare yourself for that kind of feedback because it's very tough. It's a tough subject matter. And that's what I kind of said in my pre-show speech, like, please be forewarned that this is sensitive, but I promise you will laugh. But yeah, that was...
Yeah, I think my show has polarized people always for positive or negative, and I live for that. What I don't want is for people to be ambivalent. Just a quick primer on my show. It is about this character named Wes, who basically is like Ebenezer Scrooge if Ebenezer Scrooge was like a millennial, queer fashionista from Brooklyn. And they buy the dilapidated, this is a fantasy, they buy the dilapidated Upstairs Lounge space, and they're going to tear it down to launch their fashion flagship store. And then instead they're transported back into the past, and it's this rock and roll time travel musical that uses the fire to have a kind of intergenerational conversation about like what has happened in, queer culture over the last 50 years. So there's two different types of criticism I've gotten. It is very much about 1973, and it's about 2023, or I guess 2017 when it premiered. So it is not about the AIDS epidemic at all. And so I did get some criticism from some queer audiences being like, how can you talk about gay history and not make it about AIDS? Which valid, critique.
Before the AIDS crisis.
Yeah, but I was like, but that's not the story I'm telling. Yeah. And then the other critique is that, like I said, he's Ebenezer Scrooge, so some people are like, that is like the most insufferable gay character I've ever seen in my entire life. I was like, thank you, it's based on me. With all of that, there's, hopefully some good comments every now and then that, bolster you and become your armor to deflect against the other stuff.
Okay, I'm skipping the line here. Self-imposed criticism. Me and my co-writer had 118 pages to tell a story that is so big. We had to pick, characters, people that kind of interwove with the plot we were trying to tell. We had to combine things. We had to kind of invent situations and conversations that never happened, all under the basis that we were trying to not retell the story, but tell a story in the spirit of what was going on, what was happening, and then the journey that continued afterwards. So I think that's something that I continue to grapple with. And maybe it's a TV show, and then you get to do everything, and even then, it's not everything. But it's certainly a rewarding challenge to continue to come up against.
Also, I had chosen early on to make it only an hour. I just thought, and then I realized that was a really difficult restriction for telling the story. So along the lines here, even already today and yesterday, I hear comments from people, and they've shared things that I thought, oh gosh, that would be so good if it was in there. Or did I miss the whole story because I missed that one moment? So of course we all want to get it all in there. I will say that I have never received any direct criticism. No one's walked up to my face and said, well, that was a terrible telling of that. In fact, I think audiences that finally make it there, especially in Houston, are, well, not especially in Houston, but in Houston, where we've done the show. I did it 2 years ago at the MCC, and then I got this call to come bring it here, and I was like, yeah, the greatest honor of my life, just like, yes, I want to bring the show here. But it was getting people to come, getting gays to come. I would walk around town. I was just like the gay Pied Piper. I was just like with my poster going, got to come to the show. I go to all the bars. Please come to the show. Well, we might hang that. Oh, 32 murdered? I don't know. I don't know if we can hang that up. I don't think people want to hear that. Oh no, I think they can hear that. They can hear that. It might be hard to hear it, but also, it ends very positively. We show how the gay liberation movement in New Orleans emerged from that. So I think it'll be okay. Well, we'll think about hanging it up. Then I go back and they didn't hang it up, so I just put it on the board myself. But, or cover up another poster with it or something that was covering up our posters. There was a battle of advertising the show. But it was really strange. And then the main gay publication was doing their Pride issue, and I contacted them over and over and over just to get one listing in the calendar of our show. And they had a mega issue for Pride, huge, but they refused. They just refused to list us. So strange. I was like, how can we have a mega issue with all these things going on, and you can't just list in the calendar one reading of this show about this? So I just found that it was just kind of, it's hard to lead people there. I would say that is once they come, they're happy they heard it. They're enlightened, they're energized. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you have to do this everywhere. Everyone needs to see this. Everyone needs to know the story, which would be true of all these works, right? Everyone needs to hear these stories. I want to see all y'all's stuff. It's amazing. But that's the biggest thing I faced, was just a lack of care, a sort of distaste for the idea of looking at such a thing. I have to tell you, I went into this place where they sell crystals and potions and goddess statues called the Magic Cauldron. And I walked up and this woman was sitting there, and they're usually just amazing. I love them, but I just got someone in a bad mood. So I showed her the poster, and she looked at it, and she took it away from me, and she went, 1973? I don't believe we should look at the past. It's not valuable. We need to look to the future for healing. So I just engaged her into a conversation about what it means to look at this event in the past and revisit those things and what they have to tell us. But then she said, I don't like it, but I'll hang it up. So it was just kind of difficult to get people to come to the material. That's what I found. Once they're there, they're happy they came.
To just really quickly dovetail on that, I would just say, yeah, when you're creating work about the upstairs lounge fire, I think there's a lot of assumptions about what kind of experience that will be that you're kind of up against. When my show got announced first in the New York Times, there was this little article I remember reading in the comment section. Someone wrote what will they think of next? A musical about the Holocaust? And then I was thinking, oh my God, what's your favorite Holocaust musical? Mine's Cabaret.
Producers.
Sometimes the producers, sometimes The Sound of Music. There's literally been so many Holocaust musicals.
Logan's Heroes.
It's all about the execution, okay?
And that's correct. That is very correct. Now, last night, you two were here. I don't know if you were in the room at the end of the the panel, but there was a woman, she may be here again today, so I'm not trying to embarrass her. I just think she brought up a very valid point, and it did cause a little discourse in the back of the house where I was sitting, when she very emphatically broached the panel saying she was 100% straight, and she didn't think we should promote this as a gay tragedy. It's everyone's tragedy, which she's right, but she's wrong. Because the whole reason why it's such a tragedy is it was ignored because it was a gay tragedy. It was a gay crime. It was gay murder. And I think it's great that straight people want to be like on with the, I mean, like, I kind of identify, I don't know what I am, but you know, it's like, I think it's great that, gotta be honest. I think it's great that people want to empathize and are concerned and take it as they should be. I think anybody with a heart should be and does. But I think to malign it by saying it's not a gay, that's what she said. She was like, oh, you shouldn't refer to it as gay. And it's like, but it is gay. It was a gay bar. There were gay people that were murdered, and even the people that were advocates and allies that were there were still gay. I'm queer-minded. You know, I mean, so I think that's something, and I thank all of you for your art, because I think art is what makes our humanity real. And just getting to know all of you, I consider you friends, and I consider you people with full hearts and true artists, because true artists are not in it for the commercial profit or recognition. They're there to bare their souls for their art, and I think all four of you do that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing your works, because I haven't yet, as I saw yours the other night, and really, you guys, thank you for being here. Now, what should we talk about next? Any recipes? Any recipes? Go ahead.
I just want to say that Bobby Fiesler was just so welcoming to the idea of, he's right over there, of just so, first of all, I'm such an, it's like, I just tell you a little anecdote. So we did the show last Sunday in Houston because I knew we were coming here, and I thought, well, God, we've got to do it in Houston. So we had an event there, and Bobby came, and he'd never seen it. So I was sweating bullets, right? I mean, there he is. He hasn't even seen the adaptation. I was kind of afraid he might stand up and say, like, no, stop the show, you know? But he's been so gracious about understanding that what we all do is we pass the baton, right? Like Bobby wrote his book, and I took it, and then I just sort of grabbed bits here and there, and I rearranged it, and I had a general idea of another kind of restructuring because I had to do that for an hour, and because it just, everything's different, and there's just no sense. It was just like, thank you for that. No kind of, I didn't write that or whatever, you know, which was so gracious, and I think that's what's wonderful about what we do is each of us takes it and turns it around and takes our own personal aspect. And, you know, there could be 1,000 people who tell this story. But I just wanted to point that out. And I just want to point out one thing, too. When I asked Bobby, first of all, I said, I'm going through the fire part. And they're all going to kind of, it's sort of third person, but they're all the characters in third person. So it's kind of an interesting hybrid of dramatic reading. But I didn't create dialogue. Like, I didn't feel like I could just create dialogue out of the blue like you must have created dialogue. But, like, I just was, like, using Bobby's words, but they're speaking in third person. And I asked him about that, and he said, I never at my readings read the fire. It's too upsetting. And I said, it's going to be the very middle of our piece. Because in our piece, my feeling was, like, we're going to hear the fire. Like, we just got to hear the fire. And that part is hard to do, but... anyway, I just wanted to say that it was great for him to hand it off so graciously, and I really appreciate that. So,
yeah, you also inspired me to mention that I'm a little bit nerding out because everyone whose works I've been reading and documentaries I've been watching for the past 10 years are here, and it's really meaningful because without them, I wouldn't have had the resources and inspiration to choreographed this production. I actually choreographed it in 2014 for a Fringe Festival, and it was a short 30-minute performance, and so we got inspired to completely remount it and add so much more depth and detail. And another tough aspect of the lounge when you're telling the stories is, which I didn't include the first time, is depicting the arsonist. I think as time went on, I thought it was very necessary to bring Roger to light and kind of show the context of how much trouble he had with himself as a gay man and how damaging that was, and just a big overarching problem of why this, fire happened.
I think what's really interesting, and I'm curious how y'all dealt with it, but for me, I always just want to approach my things from a place of authenticity. So it's like I didn't set out to write a time travel musical, but when I started, I knew that I wanted to write about the upstairs lounge fire, and I started to put, pen to paper, or I guess fingers to computer. I felt like I'm not from 1973. I was not alive then, and I'm not from New Orleans. And these people who were at this bar were not public figures. It's not like Cher and Elton John died in a fire. It's like they're people. And also, these people back then didn't, because of how prevalent the closet was and the oppression. People didn't even want to go on the record as having been there. So it's like, who am I to use these real people's names and ascribe words to them? Like, I didn't feel like I could do that. So in every program of my show, there's always an insert that has all the facts of the fire. It names everybody and tells the story. But with my show, I've always said, the characters, if you know the history, you know who these people are, you know who they're referencing, but they have different names in my show. And I felt like that was the only way I could approach it authentically, that I didn't feel like the ghosts were going to be like haunting me at night, being like, you fucked our story up.
Maybe that's why I had technical glitches yesterday. That's what I said.
I love this micography for us. It's very.
Let me entertain you. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, now, what kind of press coverage have each of you received for your work? New York Times, online, Twitter, Elon Musk. Hunter?
Well, you said nice things, so I'll take that.
And I have a big mouth, so there you go.
We're still in our infancy and kind of getting it out, and the read-through last night was a big step. Yeah, they didn't boo, so we did all right.
He got a standing ovation. He's being
Well,
very modest.
no, that's-
And it was a very long standing ovation.
Oh, while I have the mic, I want to point out Johnny Townsend here. What a great guy. Y'all did a great job last night pointing out his contribution to the entire thing, but I spent a lot of time thinking about Johnny Townsend. I'd never met him before, trying to create, he's a character in the script, and I was like, I hope I kind of figure this out right, and just what a remarkable human being, and yeah, give him a hug, a high five, pat on the back.
Yeah, we've had some good press coverage, really unexpectedly. I mean, when I wrote the show, when I started writing it back in 2011, I was like, this is just something I'm doing for me. Like I said, I want to understand my own history, and this will never get produced because it's going to be a very expensive show, and no one's going to put money into something that has this very horrible pitch problem. If you're in an elevator doing your elevator pitch, it's hard to say, yes, give me $1 million to do a musical about gay people dying in a fire. That does not sound seductive. And when you try to tell a longer pitch about why it is super important and that it's actually a celebration, et cetera, the elevator, they have gone and left. Do you know what I mean? I never even thought the show would be produced, and it took 6 years to get produced from when I, just having conversations with all these different people, just pushing that boulder up the hill. But since the production off Broadway, it subsequently had 30 productions around the world. It's been seen by over 100,000 people. It was recently this year in Tokyo, translated into Japanese and performed for 20,000 people there, which was crazy. Yeah, it was the year it came out. I was in the Out 100, I guess, Out magazine. It had features in New York Times, and I don't know. I feel weird. I'm not trying to be like da 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 da. Here's my CV, but I would just say the fact that anyone saw it is remarkable to me, and that it continues to have this life, I think is cool, because then it's like Brigadoon, you know, like right now it's currently, there's a production happening in Massachusetts this weekend, you know, and it's like you have the upstairs lounge being reinvented and reimagined by local communities and popping up in all of these different places, and that to me is really, really cool. Billboard Times Square. We had a billboard in Times Square. Yeah. It also helped that the lead of my show was Jeremy Pope, and this was right before, you know, he got 2 Tony nominations and now is a big TV star. And also in the first reading of The View Upstairs, playing the drag queen was MJ Rodriguez, who's the first trans woman to, you know, be nominated for a Golden Globe. So I've had some good supporters over the years who have been a part of the project and helped kind of push it forward.
That's amazing. I was recently interviewed for The Gambit, and we got a wonderful article. I just had to note that in the beginning of the interview, I was told, like, you know, The Fire's getting a lot of press. Tell me more about the show. And I said, well, actually, The Fire didn't get a lot of coverage. That's the reason why I'm doing this show. So I felt it was very important to put that into perspective. And we had our opening night. We were completely sold out. We had to have people stand. And so I'm hoping that more people will be coming to see it.
Our show is very tiny. I've only done it a few times in a single performance at a time. I would love to do a run of it so we could actually have a review, but just Facebook people writing about how inspired they were is about as far as mine gets. It's very humble, it's very tiny. It's the traveling version of the story. You know, 5 people in a row, voices, jazz piano, that's it. Very simple. But so what my hope is, someone afterwards said, who was the theater director, what are your hope for this? And I said, well, I'd like more people to hear this. I just want people, there's no big production here. This is not about, oh, the lights look great and the costumes. It's just the story. So I'd like more people to hear the story. I'd like a lot of young all gay students in Houston to come here, and straight, everyone. I just want everyone to hear the story. But my dream would be to run it sometime and just have like many, many more people come, and then the word to get out, like, you really need to come to this story and to bring it to more people. I think this is what we all want, right? So this is spectacular, and everything that you're all doing. But like this amount, I had no idea that the story had been heard that much. That is just the greatest thing in the world.
No, he did. He pulled up. He was like, I thought he was kidding. We were over a friend's house after the festivities last night, and he's like, let me show you Tokyo. And it's like, what is he talking about? And there was the Japanese company performing your work, and it was amazing. Yeah,
so one thing that was kind of scary about that was I have a character in my show named Inez, inspired by Willie Inez Warren, and there's like 14 words for rice in Japanese, and they somehow mistranslated Inez into Ine. And so then when the press release went out, I was like, okay, you can't have like a Puerto Rican character named Rice. Like everyone's going to think I'm racist, but it was like Rice played by, I was like, oh my God. I was thinking this is just another crazy story. I guess this is like a fun press thing, but someone at one of my shows, we had like on Fridays like a 8 p.m. show, and then we had like an 11:30 crazy wild show, and that's like when all like the crazy club kids would come out, and it was kind of just like a more raucous atmosphere, and it was really fun because in our musical we recreated the bar, so and you had to like say like the passcode to get it. It was just like it had like an atmosphere to it. So anyway, I was fully intending to go to the midnight show that night, but then at the earlier show, someone in the audience had a heart attack, and we had to stop the show. All the actors had to leave. They had to call an ambulance, like get this person out of there so that they could get to the hospital. So I left. I was like, I'm going home. I'm not staying for that. I'm like having a cocktail and an Ambien. And then so I did, and then like right as I'm like conking out into oblivion, I get a text being like, why aren't you here? RuPaul is here. And I was like, no, because I live like an hour away, so I never met RuPaul. But then RuPaul did 2 different interviews where they mentioned The View Upstairs and like how much they loved it. So then our producer had like on buses going through the city the quote from RuPaul from our show, even though I never met RuPaul.
I'll tell you something funny. Last night I decided I'm gonna go look at the plaque. So I went to look at the plaque, and a woman from the Gemini bar came out, and she came up to me and she said, yeah, lots of people look at that plaque. You know why? You know why it's so famous? RuPaul put that plaque in the ground. And I said, oh, RuPaul, are you sure? Yeah, RuPaul, put that in the ground. That's why everybody comes and sees it. I tell them that all the time, and I thought, well, as long as people come, you know.
Was she a customer at the Gemini, or she was working there? Or?
She was a friend who was helping bar back.
Oh, God. Oh, well, all right, there you go. Maybe a beer bottle hit her in the head. Oh, my God. My RuPaul story that has nothing to do with any of this is I met him before he was famous, and I had this roommate that was working at Jules, and if you're old enough, you remember Jules, and so we went to Atlanta to get his stuff, and so it was me and, like, as is my life, 5 gay guys in a bar, and so I'm sitting over in the corner, and this is like 1982, and this 8-foot drag queen comes up to me and goes, "You're a real girl." And I said, "I am." And he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I'm with them over there." "Is anyone bothering you?" "No." He goes, "Well, if they do, you send them to me, honey. This is my house. I'm Rue." And I'm like, "Okay." And he goes, "I'm going to be famous." And I said, and I believed him. Yeah. Or her. I believed her. You know, and sure enough, like several years later, oh, there he is. So anyway, that's my RuPaul story. And if I ever get to meet her again, I'll be like, "Hey, do you remember?" She will. No, she was very cool. And, like, you know, again, his mother loved him. That's why he's where he is. You know, it's like, you can do anything you want, baby. You can be an 8-foot drag queen on TV. Yes, you can. Yeah, back in the 80s, like, people were like, "What do you think for the future?" I said, "Drag's going to be mainstream by the millennium." And people thought I was absolutely daft. But look. And here we are today with the upstairs lounge fire that, like, oh, people wouldn't even say out loud as recently as 10 years ago even. People just wouldn't talk about it. They were just too freaked out. It was just too upsetting. And even now, like when the Leatherman started doing the acknowledgement, which, any Leatherman in the audience? How long ago they started doing that? I think 5 years ago? It's just in recent years they started doing that. I thought right before the pandemic. Okay, I knew it was thanks, Bill. It was pretty recently. You know, it's like, every time I go, it's like a new experience because it's so emotional and it just brings out so much raw emotion, like all of your work. I mean, that is what art is. And the thing I've noticed, especially this last year, is the crowds get bigger every year. And last year I was standing by the plaque because I was waiting for somebody. That was a meeting point. It was after all the ceremony had gone on. And tourists were coming up explaining it to me. They're like, "You know what happened here, don't you?" I'm like, "No, what happened?" I always like to hear other people's, like, take on things, because sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's painful, and sometimes it's so far out in left field that you're like, what did you smoke? Where did you come from? But people this year were, like, really, really upset, really sincere in their grief, and I think that says a lot, and especially what we're dealing with now politically, what's about to come down here. We have an election coming up, and I'm not going to be too political because, you know, I guess you're not supposed to. But we have an election coming up, you know, for governor, and, you know, drag could be banned here. I mean, like, just crazy. It's crazy stuff. You're going so backward. So it's very brave of all of you to commit to the work that you've done too.
Can I just say something really quickly? What I find to be very interesting is, like, and I think I was trying to get into this in the view upstairs and contrasting these decades, is that it's like, yes, there has been so much progress. Like, you know, the other week I saw Broadway Bears, and which is basically like a Vegas level, like, boylesque show. And I was like, just thinking about, like, and there was so much homoeroticism in that. And I was just thinking about, again, my uncle who died when I was 10, and just, like, the change I've even seen in my lifetime. Like, there has been so much incredible progress, and, you know, in spite of all these political forces, you know, they're going to try to bring us back, but they will not. But at the same time, I weirdly feel like with all this progress, we've lost some visceral sense of community, which is why I'm so interested in the upstairs lounge, because, like, the more there seems to be, like, this weird inverse relationship where, like, the more civil rights you have, the less of an identity you have as you become assimilated and accepted into society. And you don't need these types of spaces in the same way where you know everybody and you're staging Nelly dramas, and there's the beer bust, and there's, you know, the religious service, and, you know, you can really count on people in that same way. So I don't know, that's something I'm always concerned about, of, like, you know, are we going to, with all this progress, do we lose our communities and instead get, you know, corporate sponsorships and, you know, phones where we can, like, filter out 99% of the people we don't want to interact with?
Yeah. No, that's a very valid point. And actually that speaks to when the upstairs lounge fire occurred, and actually you illustrated that in your work the other night, you know, it was a community. It was a very tight community. And even when I came on the scene in the 80s, right before the AIDS crisis starts, very tight community. And when the AIDS crisis did hit, people that hated each other helped each other. If somebody was afflicted with AIDS, people that didn't like them before dropped everything and helped them. Everybody helped each other out. And I don't see that as much anymore, and it really breaks my heart. And you're right about that. And just this, I mean, you know, it is a community destroyer, you know. In some ways it's great because, oh, I can talk to my friend in Australia, you know. Other ways, yeah, but I'm not talking to the guy like across the hall from me or next door. So you don't really know your neighbors anymore. And then the loss of bars. I mean, there were lesbian bars in the city when I first came here. There were 4 or 5 lesbian bars. Now, I meet young women all the time that are new to the city or tourists. Where do we go? I don't know. The Phoenix, which sounds crazy because the Phoenix is a bear bar and it's a leather bar, but it's a neighborhood bar. It's a community bar. And it's a safe space for women because all the bartenders know to respect women and treat them as equals with everybody else. I mean, it's crazy. You know, like, you're right, the more we advance, the more we don't. Same in New York, though. All the gay bars are closing. There are, like, mainstay gay bars there that on Christopher Street that have closed. I don't know. You know, it's like progress, but it's not progress. Yeah.
I mean, I have a loud voice, so I'm just going to stop with the microphone at this point. 'Cause it's still Oh, no, I need to? Okay.
Dang. Okay. Well, yeah. No, I was gonna say, like, that to me is the most powerful part of the story in the Upstairs Lounge. You know, it's the community and the community that was lost. And so, like, to me, my show is really not tragic, other than, like, you know, there's like a 5-minute sequence at the end that is pretty intense. But the rest of the show is like a celebration, you know, because it's like, that is what I'm yearning for. It's like, I want to see these people alive. I want to see the community that I wish that I had, that I felt in my life that I never had. And I feel like that is something that has also been lost to time, that I'm desperate for us to figure out how to get back as well.
Well, I think, did you want to say something, Monica?
Oh, no. I'm much more comfortable dancing than speaking. Just I agree with you, though. In my production, there's a lot of celebration, to the point where, like, I could see the audience having so much fun, and I felt guilty. I was like, oh, no, it's about to get dark. I'm going to ruin their fun. But I think it's very important. You know, United We Stand, that's such an anthem of the bar. And I feel like we need to have that more today. Like, that song should be playing all the time. And something else they would say, you know, at their services, gay and straight, we shall overcome. If people could just step outside of themselves and see the struggles of other people, I feel like the world would be a better place.
Absolutely. Yeah, you just reminded me. My first gay pride in Boston on Boylston Street, I was dancing to Diana Ross's I'm Coming Out with 3 black drag queens, and I had no idea what I'm coming out meant. I just thought they meant, oh, you're coming out of your house to go, yeah. I was 17, so, and it was 1977.
When are you publishing your memoirs? I'm buying them.
It was 1977. I didn't know any better. Now, you're performing this weekend, correct? Where's your performance going to be at?
It's going to be at the New Orleans Museum of Art Lapis Center, 8 p.m. Every night, tonight and tomorrow, with a matinee on Sunday, 3 p.m.
Fabulous. Everyone has to go, and I want to hear reports. No, you're doing a performance too, right?
Yeah, we're doing Sunday at 4:30. I hope you'll all come. I know it's like at the very end, but I really hope you'll come. I mean, we've come from Houston. I have 5, I think, really good actors. I really hope they've really poured their hearts into the piece. And a jazz pianist who's in the back, Philip Hall, who is the head of the Philip Hall Singers in Houston, which is an amazing group. And I just wanted to say what you're saying about, you know, celebrating the life and community. That's why we have a jazz pianist, because the jazz and everything leading up. I saw the structure as, oh my gosh, it's obvious, right? You know, everything leading up to the fire with a little bit of like political, like getting in touch with, especially for those people who aren't aware, like this woman that made the comment about it's a human tragedy. First of all, that's like saying Black Lives Matters. No, it's all lives matters. It's like, no, we're talking about this black issue, right? She doesn't know her history. She doesn't know that specifically laws were codified, and the American Psychiatric Association was, saying that you were mentally ill. So if you were 16 years old, you come out to your parents, they put you in an institution, and they put you in solitary
Right.
confinement. She doesn't know that. She just thinks, oh, we're all
Sodomy
sort of
laws,
okay,
yeah.
right? And that's why someone needs to just walk up to her and give her a book and say, read this. I don't mean to sound condescending, but, this might help you if you just know your history a little bit better before you think that. We are all human. I'm rambling. But what I was going to say is that we have the jazz to celebrate the life in the bar before the fire takes over. And it's so nice to hear you share that. Because, I was alive. I was born in 1963. I'm the old man on the panel here.
I'm older than you.
So 60. So, things were different, and I don't even know what to say about that. But, when you used to wait for the weekend to go out instead of shopping online for a date, you used to wait, and you used to put your best foot forward, and you combed your hair, and you went out in your best, tightest, whatever outfit to go cruise, right? And you met someone in person, and you engaged them, and how you looked and how you interact mattered. And now it's kind of like statistics and like swipe and like, or you get ageism, sort of like, what are you doing on here, old man? Get off. Or, just terrible things happen on this because you're anonymous, and gosh, that's a whole other discussion. But anyway, the community is important, and so I think the aspect of having Philip playing, I hope you'll all enjoy it. Just as the kind of, it's like if you were doing the movie, you'd have a score. He's our score and our life and our pulse, and having it be jazz really contributes to the joy of that. It allows us to excerpt the actual songs. We have both of those songs that you're talking about actually sung by the cast just a bit, just to get that feeling out there. Yeah. So I hope you'll all come at 4:30.
And where?
It's here. It is in this room. Yeah, we're talking like simple. Music, actors, go. So we're not bringing in light booms. We're not, no glitter bombs, no nothing.
Well, I'll supply the glitter bomb.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, I can do that.
You have that in your.
There is a glitter bomb in my show.
I am so jealous.
Oh, I'm totally there.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's all I wanted to say.
I was already going, and now I'm totally there. And of course, Max's work you can find online. What was that? YouTube we watched last night?
Yeah, there's clips on YouTube. There's me singing one of the songs from the show in Assless Chaps at Joe's Pub. Probably shouldn't be online, but it is. And I'm going to be singing 2 songs tomorrow. I hope, if my voice, shows up. So I'm going to do that. Also, the cast album is on Spotify, Apple, streaming, wherever, Yeah. And there's some good singers in it. Nathan Lee Graham, who got nominated for a Drama Desk and a Lortel for that performance. Frenchie Davis, I don't know if you remember her from The Voice or Idol, but she's amazing. And yeah, of course, Jeremy Pope, who's iconic.
That's great. And then Hunter, is your work? I know, like there was a reading. Is there like a published piece that people can?
There's not.
Nothing yet?
By virtue of how the process of screenwriting and producing works, it's not really. But if anybody's interested, I'll be glad to send it to you.
Yeah, because that was a really powerful piece of work. Sure.
Hunter, it's easy with words to do the fire. It might be easy to do it in a stylized way. To actually film it, how do you handle that?
So it's written in the script from the perspective of Buddy at that point, and it comes in the middle because we treat it as kind of a tease. You don't really know what's going. It's kind of an unveiling as to what actually happened. You just see the before and the aftermath. And it's meant to be set up as like, I really want to know what happened. And then when you see what happened, you're like, okay, I didn't really want to know what happened. And so the way that we kind of reasoned to ourselves we could show this was to see what Buddy did in those moments, because he's kind of the perspective that we're seeing, and him jumping the bar and grabbing people and running out, and you're kind of seeing this in the periphery. It's not meant to be explicit. It's not meant to be gratuitous. It's just to show what Buddy was able to do in those times based on his history as in the military as not fire marshal, but just all of the fire prevention week, doing the floats. Like that part just seems so specific to just stick with him for those moments. Yeah. It
was very powerful, yeah. And it was funny because attended knowing, obviously knowing the subject matter, but not really knowing too much else about it. And there's a character that's based on an actual friend of mine who was there that night, and I immediately recognized who the actor was portraying. And I told you that already. I mean, that's how amazing this were. And what really impressed me was when we talked about it, you hadn't met Regina. You just cast that actor, and I really thought that actor, had the essence of who she is. It really did. I just totally recognized it. So I can't say enough. It was really just such an amazing piece of work.
I'm going to shout out Clay and Johnny and Bobby again and Robert here because they did incredible archivist work, and all of the information I cribbed for my script was because of those gentlemen and so many other people that I'm not naming right now. So it's going all to them. I'm a vessel. So
Yeah, no, but it was your concept that brought it all together. So really, congratulations. Congratulations, everybody. Now I'm a bad moderator because I shut off my phone because I didn't want it to go off in the middle of the interview, so I have no idea what time it is. 10 minutes. We got 10 minutes left? I was just going to do that, yeah. Folks, we're going to open it up, and come on down. You're on the prize.
My name's Robert Camino. Documentarian. I've had the pleasure of knowing or meeting most of the people on the panel here. And I just want to say that as a documentarian, documentaries aren't for everybody, and there's not like a rush for people just to go see films, documentary films, and books aren't for everybody. And so I am so grateful for the artistic aspect of telling the story because it reaches people that we can't reach from an academic point of view. And by you guys taking on the story, you're helping to educate and keeping the story alive and sharing it in ways we can't. And I especially saw that with Max's production of The View Upstairs.
You saw it when it was in New York, right?
Yes, we had our New York premiere at the exact same time as his run. He and his cast came to the screening in New York, and I went to the production. It was really just a kind of like a spiritual experience to share that together. I also want to acknowledge the late Wayne Self and his musical Upstairs, who they had the production 10 years ago this weekend, and Skylar Fine and for that art, because art is powerful. And so thank you guys for helping to elevate the dialogue, because with every production, with every reading, more and more people learn about it, more and more people talk about it, and that's what will keep the story alive. LGBT, members of the LGBT community, people outside our community, allies, it's all about the conversation. And I just, added note, I just think it's really cool that we're having this conversation about the arts because shows were put on at the Upstairs Lounge. I've had the opportunity to get to know the children of Betty McAnair, who was the director of the Nellie dramas, and come to find out, she lived about 15 minutes from where my parents lived and I grew up, and she passed away in February of 2014, and I found out where she lived in the fall of 2014. And so she would be thrilled. She would be thrilled with this and what your guys' work. So again, thank you guys for your work.
This isn't exactly a question, and it's directed more probably to Max, but back I graduated from Tulane in 1973, in May of 73, and I was not out at that time. And the night of the fire, I was actually in a production of Brigadoon at Tulane, and it was closing night. So I didn't know anything about the fire at that time. Back a few years ago, I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and one of the community theaters there did a cabaret show for a fundraiser every year, and I did that a couple of years. And I'm still on the mailing list, even though I live in Baton Rouge now. And the director had sent out something requesting ideas for shows. And I sent back and I suggested Wayne Self's musical. And I said, and if you can't do that, don't like it, or you can't get the rights to it, there's another musical, The View Upstairs. And they actually did The View Upstairs in Raleigh this spring and in March, and I went up there for it. And I had got in touch with the director and told him I was coming up, and he was thrilled that I'd. And I was like this big celebrity because I had not, seen the show yet or anything, but just the fact that I had lived here at the time, that it happened and things, and had recommended the show. So I just wanted to say that it was exceedingly well, received up there. I mean, they said it was like the best show that they had most successful show they had ever done up there. So and.
Thank you for recommending it.
And also, I wanted to say for you, I came in a couple of minutes late, so I didn't get your name, but you might look into maybe some smaller community theaters around, or maybe even some university theater departments for putting on your play.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great idea. I'm trying to think of how to get the word out more, and that's a great idea. Thanks. Sure, and it's really simple to produce. That's a big deal. Thank you so much. That's a great suggestion.
Thank you guys so much for doing this panel for us. I had a question for Hunter about, can you talk a little bit about your experience with trying to get the screenplay produced, like the responses that you've gotten from producers, if you've struggled, if they've been really hesitant, or obviously it's not done, so you've probably had a little bit of resistance, but I'm interested to know what the response has been.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of it started with me. It's taken so long to do, so it's still very early. We've approached one person, and they couldn't do it, but it was like one of those right people that was like, this is perfect. I think going forward, it's going to be finding the right collaborators, right? Because we were talking about this last night. You don't want someone to come in, and Johnny's book exemplifies this. You don't want somebody to come in and just completely reinvent what happened. And as much as we kind of did that, we tried to stay true to what this really happened. So we're very wary about bringing on partners that are going to change the essence. They're going to change the scenarios. They're going to come in and have this big, swooping, weird, contrived ending. So that's, I think, going to be the obstacle going forward. But at the same time, I think it kind of weaves in a lot of very popular, like, true crime narratives to kind of attract people who already show up for those genres, and then next thing they know, they're watching the story of the Upstairs Lounge. So yeah, we're still early. I think at this point it's finding producers who champion it the right way and are representative of the community, and who are doing it for the right reasons. Yeah.
Max, I was hoping you could mention or talk a little bit about the Jefferson Parish Performing Arts Association performance that's coming up, since it wasn't just mentioned. And I think, to my understanding, it's the first production here in Louisiana, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I am so excited about that. That's happening in September, so I think I'm going to come back for that. I'm pretty sure I'm definitely coming back for that. But yeah, I love that. It's so crazy to me that the show went to Tokyo before it came here, but whatever, that's how it played out. But I'm really deeply honored that it is. I mean, the experience of having a show published and then going out into the world can be really terrifying. It's a little bit like you give birth to this child, you raise them, then they go off to college, and sometimes they're going to get like blackout drunk and fuck the wrong people. And then sometimes you see them and you're like, oh my God, you're dating someone so good. I'm so proud of you. You got your life together. You know what I mean? So like I at this point in my life, I don't see most of the productions. But I definitely think I'm going to come back for this one because it's special for it to be here in Louisiana on the 50th anniversary of the fire. Like that I feel like the spirits are going to be in the room. So, and it seems like a dope theater. So I'm excited.
Okay, and with that being said, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for coming. Please stay for the rest of the program today, and we'll see you at the march later on this afternoon.